Hello, my dear students of grade 5. How are you? I hope you are fine. Today we have a story Around the World in 80 Days, Chapter 6. Let's start. Here we are going to start Chapter 6. The title Across the Atlantic to England. Here our chapter started in New York Harbor when Fogg looked all the day for a new ship. Why? To take him to Liverpool. But he couldn't find anyone. Late that evening, he spoke to Mrs. Oda, Passepartout, and Fix, and they spent one night at a hotel, and they could go the next day. So they went to an expensive hotel and they stayed for one night. And the next morning, he left. He left the hotel, and he went to the harbor. At 7 o'clock, he spoke to a small ship there, and he spoke to the captain of it. He was called Andrew Speedy. Okay, and they were going to the south of France. Mr. Speedy, he was going to south of France, and Mr. Fogg asked him that he wanted to go to Liverpool. But the captain said to him, "We are going to the south of France." He said to him, "I am going to speak with the captain and about going to Liverpool." But Mr. Speedy said to him, "I am the owner of the boat, or I'm owner of the ship." And he asked him, Mr. Fogg, that he would give him all his money he wanted. Okay, all his money he wanted, but he wanted to go to Liverpool. So he said to him, "How much will you pay?" asked Speedy. He said to him, £2,000. He said, "For every one of you?" Fogg answered, "Yes, £8,000 for all." "What do you say?" asked him. Captain Speedy thought for a minute. £8,000 was a lot of money for 4 passengers, and he didn't have to change his plan at all. Okay, and he accepted. So at 9 o'clock, the 12th of December, Mrs. Oda, Passepartout, and Fix left New York, and on this ship, the Henrietta. Later, when they were at the sea, Fogg talked to the sailors on the Henrietta. The sailors, and they didn't like Captain Speedy. Why? Because he was a hard man. Fogg gave them some money and explained that he needed to go to Liverpool, not France. The sailors all agreed to take him there because the captain didn't agree. The sailors didn't agree, took him, and sorry, the sailors took Mr. Speedy, Captain Speedy, and put him in his cabin and locked the door behind him. He shouted at them from inside his cabin, but there is nothing to stop them. And after 4 days, they crossing the Atlantic, and he was going to uh, going to be late, Mr. Fogg, and he wanted to go faster. So what did he do? He asked them, he wanted to go faster. So what did they do? He wanted, so said Fogg, he wanted to burn all the wooden things on the ship to go faster. Okay, because they had no more coal. But how could they burn all the wood? Mr. Fogg wanted to buy the ship, and he asked the captain that he would give him the price of the ship. He asked him about the price, and he gave him £30,000. And that the sailors burned all the tables, the chairs, and the doors, and the wooden boards from the floor. And when they arrived in Queens Town, then Liverpool, so the Liverpool was too far. Let's get off there. Mr. Fogg said that they wanted to get out. With that, Fogg paid to Captain Speedy the money, and all the 4 passengers got off the ship, but Fix didn't arrest Fogg in Queenstown. He was waiting for them to arrive in England to arrest him. There they got on a train and traveled to Dublin. From Dublin, they got a fast ship to Liverpool. When they arrived in Liverpool, Fix arrested Fogg at last and took him to the prison. In the prison, Fogg looked at his diary. It was Saturday, 21st of December, 11:40 a.m. They arrived in Liverpool. Okay, now that's the first part. Let's have the summary in points. In New York Harbor, Fogg looked all the day for a new ship to take him to Liverpool, but he couldn't find one. So they took a carriage to an expensive hotel in New York City for the night. The next morning, Fogg woke up early. At 7 o'clock, he spoke to a man on a small ship there, the Harriet. Fogg told Captain Speedy that if he agreed to take them to Liverpool, he would sail at 9 o'clock. The sailors didn't like Captain Speedy. Then they put him in his cabin and locked the door behind him because he wanted to go to Liverpool. There was no more coal. They couldn't go faster. But Fogg gave Speedy 30,000 pounds, so the sailors burned all the tables, the chairs, and the doors. Also the wooden tables or the wooden boards from the floor. Next, let's have some questions on the first part of the chapter. What was Fogg looking for in New York Harbor? Sure, yes, he was looking for a new ship. Number 2, where did Fogg and Mrs. Auda spend the night? Yes, they spent the night at an expensive hotel in New York. Number 3, why didn't the sailors like Captain Speedy very much? We said it. Excellent. Yes, because he was a hard man. Number 4, what did the sailors do with the captain? Yes, they took him, put him in his cabin, and locked the door behind him. What did the sailors burn? Yes, all tables, the chairs, the doors, and the wooden boards from the floor. Now, let's move to the second part. Here, when Mr. Fogg arrived here, took the fast train. He took a fast train to Liverpool, and he said he would be at the club by 8:45. At 3:30, Fix visited Fogg in the prison with Mrs. Auda and a passepartout. And Mr. Fix, he said to Mr. Fogg that he was sorry because the gentleman thief, they arrested the gentleman thief, or the real one. He is a tall man, tall, handsome man. His name was James Strand. Yes, James Strand. And he was arrested 3 days ago. And he told him that Mr. Fogg was free to go. Mr. Fogg was angry, really angry, and marched out of the prison because he was late and he didn't do anything. Then Fogg, Mrs. Auda, and Passepartout ran to Liverpool station to take another train to London. Okay, and when he arrived, Mr. Fogg was very sad and he didn't want to go to his club. And he was sorry and said that to Mrs. Oda. But Mrs. Oda said to him, no problem, no problem, that he already saved her and there is no problem. Okay, let's move to the next slide. Here, after that, let's have the points. Fix arrested Fogg at last and took him to the prison, but he wasn't the thief, and Fix found the thief James Strand. Fogg marched out of the prison angrily and got on the fast train to London. The train arrived in London at 10 minutes to 9, but Fogg was 5 minutes late for the meeting with Mr. Stewart. Yes. Fogg thought that the day was a 22nd Sunday, but when he traveled east around the world, he get an extra day, so he wasn't late for his meeting. Now, Mr. Fogg thought that he was late, and it was the 22nd Sunday. But when that's something happened, when he traveled east around the world, he get an extra day, so he wasn't late for his meeting. Fogg went quickly to the club. He was happy and told the steward that he had won and he would take 20,000 from him, 1,000 pounds from him. Fogg married Mrs. Oda and they were very happy. Passepartout was happy too because he had his quiet job back again and stayed at home every day. Okay, was it clear? Now let's answer these questions together. Number 1, what would happen if Fogg left now and went to London on a fast train? Yes, he would be at his club by 8:45 that evening. Number 2, who was the gentleman thief, the real one? Sure, his name was James Strand and he was a tall, handsome man. Number 3, why didn't Fogg want to go to his club? Because he was late and he was the loser. He was late and he was the loser. Number 4, how was Fogg when he felt he was a loser? He felt sick and he didn't eat anything. He stayed in his room all day and he didn't want to see or speak to anyone or anybody. What did Fogg want from Mrs. Oda? Sure, he wanted to marry her. Okay. Why was Passepartout happy? Because he would able to, number 1, be back in London in a comfortable house in Burlington. Number 2, have his quiet job back again and stay at home every day. Okay, now they are the assessment questions. You can do them at home as a homework. Here, complete. Look at these questions and answer them. Okay, and that's the end of our lesson today. Thank you for watching and see you soon. Goodbye.